What is up, Lorcana players? I don't know why I'm calling everyone that, but we are now. Illumineers, I think they're called. Um, so I've decided to do like a tier list and cover all the decks sort of that I've been going through the meta, of course. With I put a tweet out not so long ago with like Sapphire Steel, the changes. It means one of the most prominent decks in the color combo, Sapphire Steel Ramp, has sort of become I wouldn't say unplayable, but it's pretty bad in a competitive setting to choose that as an option. And whereas before, when we had the pre-ban, when we had Hiram, you could pretty much pick the color combo Sapphire Steel, and you'd have like a bunch of decks to play. You'd have Kiwi, you'd have Sapphire Steel Ramp items, you'd have Whole New World, you'd have the ones with no Whole New World, and you could sort of really just enjoy those two color combos, and you wouldn't have to look outside of it. But now, like competitively, like I'd say it's best to pick a couple colors because Kiwi is good, and I reckon you could spend all your time just playing Kiwi, and I think you probably get good results. You get store champ wins, and in a lot of environments you still make top cut and still do very well. But for myself, I play a lot of Lorcana, so I've just sort of tried to expand my knowledge and play as many different decks as I can. And with that was sort of an understanding of where the meta is at. Because sometimes in TCGs you have an outliner of what is the best deck to play. Um, for me, it's always been Sapphire Steel. I've always felt like that had the best options that I could put into a deck to win an event. I don't think that's completely not the case anymore, but like I say, with the changes taking Hiram out of the deck, out of the color combo, and the Fortisphere as well, which was also a bigger change. It has fallen back a bit, and of course now I think the only real deck that's left to play in that color combo competitively is Kiwi. So we tried playing loads of different decks. I've got loads of different deck lists to show you, and I can sort of just show you my opinions on where the meta is at. So I think in a general scheme, the meta is in a very healthy spot, which is horrible to say that when Sapphire Steel gets banned, it didn't get a chance to play in what I would deem quite a healthy meta, which I think with just the Fortisphere being around, the deck could have survived and just been another contender in this very widespread meta. Playing all the different decks, like I don't think there's anything that's S tier. There's nothing on the level that Sapphire Steel Coil was at, which was getting so many resources, getting such good value removal, having such good win cons as well. There's no deck that's at that point right now where it's like you should be playing this deck. Of course, Ruby Sapphire, the Shark DKP build looks amazing, but it does have its like weak spots. On the draw, it also isn't like consistently just going to win you the games the same way that Sapphire Steel, no, Ruby Sapphire with the coil was. So I think it's probably the best deck to pick because what I found is on the draw I can still find my ways into the game, and I think if you added more options to get you back into the game on the draw, maybe more like crowd controlling, sort of like the Super Goof seemed to have left DKP's list, but I think that was generally a good way to like crowd control, like an early SME, and just stuff like that. Just to sort of like maybe if you had like a Queen of Hearts, I don't know, I don't play that much Ruby Sapphire, but like if you could do like sail into another sail, but also put a Queen of Hearts to crowd control as well at the same time. Because on the play, it feels like you don't need to do any of that. You just double ramp, put a shark down, and you lock out like majority of the decks in the meta. But on the draw, it feels like if there's a Sapphire, Amethyst Steel deck, or maybe even an Amber Steel deck, or just something that's just going to put two questers and go wide, it can struggle quite a bit. So I think it is probably the best performing one because I feel like I can find my way back into the game on the draw. So we'd probably put that at the top of A tier, but as I said, it doesn't come without its weaknesses. I'd probably put Amethyst Steel next, and I'd pair that with the Ruby Amethyst as well. I'm kind of like going to talk about both. They're both sort of very much the toolbox color combos of the game, where you can put the removal options you need in for the matchups that you think. Amethyst Steel could do that. You've seen that there's a lot of the dock builds because they just wanted to go under all of these Ruby decks by just spamming characters on the board and not particularly caring about the resource war. They just wanted to get as much cheap lore as they can. But they've also recently, you can see a lot of the lists have changed to be um, more designed to deal with the shark, so they'll play like the rabbit, and you just ramp up to a rabbit, and then your rabbit can sing Along Came Zeus. Playing these a bit more grinding matchup styles that I think Ruby Amethyst would play if they had access to what's it called, Along Came Zeus, but they can't. But that also means with Ruby Amethyst, like you're seeing all these Peter Pan shark builds, which is a big reaction to like the Emerald. Emerald Steel and like Emerald cards like Diablo and things like that that have evasive and could go under it. But now they're creating their own little meta as well, when they're using cards like Iago to rush in and take out genies, which would affect both any Amethyst deck, because majority of Amethyst decks do run genies again. Um, and then of course you just have standard control like bounce package stuff that you can do with Ruby Amethyst, and that will always consistently do well and be around in the meta. Like it sort of fell out of favor pre-ban because um, just Sapphire in general was getting so much more powerful, which began with Sapphire, like any of the Sapphire decks, like one of their weakest matchups was Ruby Amethyst, and then slowly that point was getting like closed off, and Ruby Amethyst was a fairly hard matchup. It was a fairly hard matchup for Ruby Amethyst to get the win versus Ruby Sapphire, and Sapphire Steel at this point was near impossible to lose against the deck. You'd have to brick majorly, like your win rate was ridiculous, like 90% or something like that. Um, but yeah, they just go back to being this toolbox thing that has like so many different options, so many different ways to build it. You can put Pegasus in there for the evasives. You can play Queen of Hearts if you want to for like the Steel Song and the like Amethyst Steel and all these lower to the ground decks, and you've just got so many different directions you can go with the deck, which is really cool. But that deck sort of for me always will float around in A tier as long as nothing like exceedingly extends its reach like the Sapphire decks were pre-ban. And then Amber Steel, I think I saw like a lot of Amber Steel representing in the meta. I think it was like one of the most popular decks in the meta. But it seems to always be this like deck that kind of can 50-50 a lot of the matchups. You can build it, I think, very much so that it will beat one matchup very well. I think if you add like Queen of Hearts, not Queen of Hearts, sorry, the Queen, the Amber Shiftline Queen, and a few cards like that, maybe this Bianca, lists like what Wojciech has been posting, you can very much just and what we saw Kurt play in the LCC, you can like very much just shore it up so you'll win a lot of the red matchups, but then that also comes with the downside of being fairly weaker into the steel matchups. Queen of Heart isn't very good into steel, being a 3 health 5 cost character, so if you don't get on the shift line, she's kind of weak, and even on the shift line, all she does is really give you an early whole new world. And then on the flip side, you can build that to be a Robin Hood deck where it uses the Robin Hood shift line, which is better into all of the steel matchups. Robin Hood's always a pain for steel. Along came Zeus, their like big removal card doesn't remove it from the board, and it can trade up. They can Rapunzel heal it. But into the Ruby matchups, it's just a fairly weak card. You know, they're playing Be Prepared, and you're investing a lot in this 5 drop. They've got Maui that could just be ran in to take it out. You do get the card draw, but you know it's not really what you wanted. You wanted it to probably trade a bit, then be removed in a trade and get the card draw. And then you've finally got like Medusa. If anyone just plays Medusa again, it's just a really weak card. If they're getting that, if they were to hard play that on 5 and you were to play Medusa on 6 and just remove it, that's just a fairly awkward spot. So Amber Steel again, it feels like it 50-50s, and you can build it to like be better into certain matchups, but overall it's not going to have a good enough widespread. But I still think it's A tier because when it does what it wants to do, it does very very well. But we're sort of dropping off to the lower parts of the A tier there. And with Emerald Steel as well, I think for a wider meta, a lot of people, myself included, don't play Emerald Steel at the level required to perform very well with it. A lot of these aggro decks will just aggro you out when your only 1 drop is pretty much going to be a Diablo bird that you're hoping to shift into a character that you don't want to trade and remove. So you're relying a lot on the removal spells there. So I don't think that's particularly amazing either. But I think again with that deck, you can completely build it in different directions. You can put Morph in there and then put like Tinkerbells or Space Pirate Pete's and like pick your matchups and stuff like that. And you could go really heavier on the discard packaging, which really hurts the Ruby matchup. So again, it's another deck that you can completely build to fight a certain matchup, and it's good when the decks and the game goes like a bit wider like this, because you're gonna have to build for events. You're gonna have to build and like kind of predict the meta waves and stuff like that. And if you're into that sort of thing, that's great. Um, if it was like a bit more of a smaller meta where it was like 2 decks were just very prominent, it was very clear. You just had to make sure that your deck could beat those 2 decks, and you probably have a good day playing the game. But now, yeah, we've got this wide meta, and all of the decks at the top of the meta will sort of build their decks completely differently, and they can be completely build them for the meta. I think like we saw a big weekend in America where Amethyst Steel was big, and then like all of the builds were just kind of like how to beat mirrors, how to beat other Amethyst Steel. And then in Europe, we saw in like Germany, we saw there was a really big uptake in the Peter Pan Shark builds for Ruby Amethyst, and they were kind of there to beat all of the discard decks. And then we saw like a Ruby Sapphire deck kind of go through, and now it's like, well, at this point, maybe a lot of people just don't want to bother trying Emerald Steel because or Emerald decks because they're just going to get eaten up by the Ruby Amethyst decks that are like fully tech for it. And then at that point, it's like, why do I have all these cards in here for this matchup when I'm not even seeing it anymore? And they might want to change their deck again. So it's a very much a big guessing game at the top of the meta when you get these widespread metas where you could claim that 4 or 5 decks have a possibility to win an event. And going into the beta, I won't cover the C tier because that's just yeah, whatever C tier or C tier. You got like Emerald Amethyst. I think you know it's these are the decks as well in my opinion. These first three in the beta where if they're piloted well, they can be tier one, they can be tier A or tier 1.5, which is kind of like where you want to be with a deck. Like it's not going to be targeted, but I think Emerald Amethyst would be targeted, but it's more we're just targeting the Emerald aspect of it. Um, but you kind of want your deck to like go under like a lot of the meta report radars, but you personally maybe have the reps in it to pilot it at a level where you can perform and get better results with it. So Emerald Amethyst I think is one of those decks with like the discard version as well. It feels like it does take quite a few reps before you can get that into a spot where you're winning a lot. Of course, you're going to have still a handful of games where you just get Diablo shift off and they have no answer in it and it just wins you the game. It's probably why it's better than the other ones. It probably has it has a wider matchup spread than the other ones do. But with all of these like steel pile, I mean, look at the top A tier. Like there's 3 steel decks in there. Yes, they can remove what's it called? Like they can play like Ursula and remove some stuff. But I think overall maybe the steel should just overpower them. Um, so I think definitely that's a deck that like pretty much is deserved to be in the A tier. It's just like me personally hasn't been putting it there. And I think because like Emerald is such a big has like such a big target on its head that it kind of in my opinion gets pushed down that tier. But there's also these like new tempo lists that have been posted by Artifacts and LD who like love the tempo style, which I think is pretty good right now to bring in if like Ruby Amethyst is quite big, quite popular again. Like all of these decks, you could build a tempo list and kind of play that game style if you know how to play it and perform it and bring it into an A tier. So yeah, I think that's like that one that is definitely on the cusp of just basically being an A tier performing deck. Personally, for me, like I don't really love the Emerald. I don't really love playing a deck that doesn't have Steel or Ruby in it. So I tend to not want to play it, even though I have tried a few decks that don't have Steel or Ruby in it. But for me personally, it's like just knowing that if they can get a wide enough board, it's a real challenge for me to shrink that board again. It's going to require individual trading or bouncing or something awkward like that. So yeah, for me personally, it's not really gelling, but I think yeah, it locks in there at that point of that tier two, tier 1.5 tier. All the Emerald Amethyst builds do. Blurple, it feels insanely great into anything that's not Emerald, and then you play into Emerald and you think, why do I play Blurple? And I know I'm going to probably offend a bunch of Blurple players for saying that, but yeah, no, I picked up, I was like, oh cool, it's got a lot of the cards um, I enjoy from Sapphire, and then it's like also oh, I get to play a Genie on turn 3, and I'm going to play against some decks that can't answer Genies that efficiently, like if it doesn't have a Brawl in it. Oh, this is really awesome. Like that's fun. That I like this. I'll even take this into the Peter Pan Iago decks that are playing Peter Pan on 3, then Iago on 4 to rush attack. I'll even challenge that. I don't mind. And then it's like every time I played into an Emerald deck, it was once Prince John was down, you know, you could slowly see the game slipping away from you. You know, we tried JDR's list and we had 4 Finders Keepers in there, but it still just didn't feel like it was ever enough. You know, they would discard a bit, and then you'd have to work on like retrieving your hand size again the next turn, whilst they play a couple characters and quest, and then they'll just Bruno some stuff, and it was just always feel like this slowly you could watch the game go away from you, and even the thing that was the best part of your deck was the ink advantage. You weren't even getting to play because you couldn't ink as much as the Emerald decks can. So it feels like this deck Blurple is great. If into Ruby Sapphire, I really enjoyed this matchup. I played it a bit against a friend and then played it at locals. And I really liked the resource war. We both had things we could bring to the board. The manas, it felt like they were always risky to play. You could do something like play a Hades and bounce it back. Then they know that their shark won't be safe if they play it. So they're going to have to think of some reason to get you to use that Hades. It just felt really good. And then into Ruby Amethyst, like I say, like even if they have the Brawl, you're getting a turn 3 Genie. You could put in things like Scrooge McDuck or like a turn three mana. It was just really overall great. It's just, but every time I played into a discard deck, it was like, oh, I have to get this genie down on three, just so I can start like taking out Diablos, or I have to get this Elsa. I have to get this Elsa as soon as I can. And then on the draw, it just felt unbeatable. It felt unwinnable. So, yeah, for me, I love the deck. I can imagine seeing myself playing it, especially playing like a JDR build if like Emerald just basically got stomped out of the meta. Because yeah, it was so many parts of Sapphire I really enjoyed. It utilized Amethyst in ways that I really enjoyed. It felt like a lot of the Amethyst draw that's felt like it's expensive recently, which is like bouncing rabbits and playing Finders Keepers, didn't feel as negative to me anymore. So definitely, yeah, awesome deck. I'd like to play it, and I think if you watch like some of these Blurple players, as much as I sit here and play like a couple days of Blurple and complain about Emerald, you watch them go and win events and make top cuts and do stuff like that with Blurple. So it's definitely, again, it's another deck that you can pilot into that A tier if you're good enough. And then yeah, at Sapphire Steel, like I try to not be biased at all about this. I generally do think it's probably the best of the weaker bunch. No, it's sorry, not like, yeah, it's best of the weaker bunch, but and by the weaker bunch I mean like the rest of the decks in the meta. Um, I think definitely with Kiwi, like if you've got the reps and you know what you're doing, there's no Alice Pluto is still good. It's struggling when like majority of your matchups are going to be spam one drops. You've got like a lot of matchups right now, like look how much purple is here, which could be like put a bunch of one drops on the board and play crabs and rush them in, and then into like these ones here and sometimes into Ruby Amethyst because a lot of them are dropping the one drops. You know, the Alice Pluto lock's going to work. Your deck's always got that thing it can fall back on if it's an aggro deck, so if your game plan's not working amazingly, you just play things off the top and they quest for how much and get answered until you get to 20 lore, and you've got huge questers in the deck. So again, it feels like out of the, I should show you, yeah, like the best of the worst bunch, the worst of the best bunch, maybe. So out of these three decks that you could pilot into an A tier, I think Sapphire Steel is just on the end of that, and that's just the way that Kiwi is right now. And I think it's only really Kiwi. I'm pretty sure, you know, if you had Lamb, Sky, Primor, Justin or Bad Vegas, or someone like that who was playing one of these new funky no Hiram lists, I'm pretty sure they could like top a winner box or something like that, or maybe take it a bit further than that. But overall, it just feels like you're fighting a losing battle there. If you just really love the collar combo, so you're going to play the deck, but it just doesn't feel like it's in the right place right now. So I think Kiwi's the only one that really survives. And yeah, like myself, I've been picking up all these other decks, and I do well with them. Like I'm learning like bits here and there about how to win these matchups, but um, just being able to know like the strength and the weaknesses of the deck that Kiwi is. I've managed to pilot some nice wins recently. That I get to talk about at some point. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, it's one of those decks again. It can just be piloted into an A tier if done properly, and if you have the reps on it, and if you want to put the time into it. But again, its strengths are no much better than like the things it can do aren't better than the things that these decks can do really. You know, this huge discard package, huge control with steel, huge consistency, like huge directions you can build the deck in, huge like you know awesome consistency as well, and then you've got these huge powerful characters that you get to play and these huge ink advantages. Whereas here we get this very nice consistent aggro game plan where we ward everything up. Ward is strong, ward is good. But yeah, it's just I think of you know the strengths don't outweigh the weaknesses, but still again I'm probably still going to play it at events. I think you can definitely pilot it to a very good level. And yeah, I just think it's a pretty awesome deck still. These other two here as well, I think, yeah, they're just sort of, you know, they're more probably going to appear in events like Amethyst. Amber always really appears in events. Yellow green, like, is a good discard deck. Like, discard is pretty nice right now, but if its discard's got a target on its back and your deck doesn't even have like Amethyst powers like Genie and Crab and Fox, and you don't even have steel removal like Emerald Steel does, sorry, you're just going to fall behind. And you know, if your discard, like the only thing yellow green does is it discards. If you don't have anything else to land on, it can kind of uh, you know you can't use any other removal options, can't fight for the board in any other way, can't fight for the win any other way, and Emerald has a big target on his head. It feels like this one's falling quite far behind, but you know I'm pretty sure again like there'll be some decent players who'll bring this up the tiers just from their performance. And the list, yeah, I've been trying like just to get sort of this data, and as I watch like the event reports as well at the same time, like I've just gone through a lot of the JDR stuff. Amazing resource, amazing player. Like you've got all of his Metafy guides. He's quite active on 20 lore as well. When I say that, don't go out and just like at him and say, "Oh, Harlem told you can at him." But if you see him like poking around in channels, I think he's one of the players who would like gratefully say hello and chat to you. Very consistent lists. I really like that they're both two-liners as well. This is two-liners with one bit of space. Just 4xing everything in there. This thing's only got a 2-2 split. And yeah, just really good resources to start playing with. Again, like all my opinions on Blurple are the same. And yeah, this is just Sapphire Steel, my Sapphire Steel list. I'm generally at a point where I can't change much on it. The only thing I kind of want to change about it is this new Peter Pan. But it's just kind of how much do I want to invest in changing and trying to improve that matchup. I think there's not particularly too many ways. I think you could still just do the 1, 2, 3 sing strength on the Peter Pan, and then anything they're playing that has evasive doesn't have rush. It's mainly that Iego that comes out as well. Like Leather Storm John would be very nice for that Iego, to be honest with you. But again, it's like I don't know if Iego's even sticking around right now. Like it's kind of hard to tell if he's going to be in the meta or not. He kind of shouldn't exist in a meta where steel is quite prominent, but in the deck like this, we're only playing 6 steel options, whereas of course the amber steel and the green steel are playing a ton more steel options. So it depends on and amethyst steel as well. So there's 3 really prominent steel decks, and you'll have a card in your deck that's kind of dead, like for the majority of the games. So it depends really on how well those perform. I think if Viego sticks around, but besides that, I don't think I've had to react too much to it. Like, there's just not much else I think you can really do to the list, especially as it's like, well, you might go heavy in on these Peter Pan Shark decks, but next week, oh wait, Peter Pan Shark decks don't exist anymore. No one's playing them. So it's kind of we do have an event in Germany that we're practicing for, which we're taking a lot of this data into consideration. But yeah, it's still kind of hard to tell if we turn up there and like people are all off that build now, or they might not be. And I think just playing a consistent ramp like ramp aggro game plan might just be the key to doing well in like a more volatile meta, because we can just continuously do our ramp. I don't know why I keep saying ramp. Aggro options whilst you know they've got like three what they call Peter Pans in hand and a genie in hand, and they're just bricked out of the game. Oh, he did some Amber Steel as well. Amber Steel's been quite fun. I felt like sometimes though, I'm not even sure how people are making top cuts for this in DLC. They must be insanely better players than me, because it sometimes feels like, right, I've got this game, it's won, and then you do a mulligan and it's like, oh god, I've got so many uninkables in hand and my curve isn't there and Cindy's not there and I've got no singers to get these uninkables out of my hand. So you just sort of lose some of your games through the um, power that you put into the deck, making it kind of a bit rougher to build and it bricks a bit more. Um, but overall, yeah, it just seems really strong as Ember Steel. Like when it works, that there's just you can kind of look at your opponent and just see that there is no way that they could have won this game. When you've got Cindy and Troubadour singing both turns, that's 6 ink free. When you're going into turn 3 and then Ariel comes down and you can, even if they take the Ariel out, you can put a Miss Bianca down. It's like, what are they going to do with a 5 health character? And you get to sing that whole new world. But again into the Emerald decks, it's like no song is safe. You don't want a song to sit in your hand for too long. You don't know when they're going to draw the Ursula, and if they don't draw the Ursula and you've been playing around it the entire time, that feels rough. So yeah, awesome as well. But it's maybe just not for me. I think with the Amber Steel players, they do really well. It feels like they've been playing Amber Steel since it like started. So maybe I just kind of don't want to put the time in, and I missed the boat on that one. And then the last thing is like Ruby Amethyst is my sort of approach to it, because I don't really want to do any of the shark nonsense, as I've said, mainly because I don't know if it's going to stick around in the meta. Like, don't know how popular it's going to actually be. I don't want to invest a lot of time into a deck that doesn't, it's Ruby Amethyst, but doesn't have a bounce package. Like that was mad to me when I saw some of these lists. I don't want to do that. Like just don't use the bounce package, but then spam finders keepers. Like it just didn't feel very fun to me. So I just went for a full bounce control package, and we managed to get like 15 plus rating on Lorcana with an alt account that we started up. So it's been performing well. Ruby Amethyst is always a deck that I've had like built. It was the first deck I ever played in set 1 when I started the game, like was way different than set one. Played it into set two, and then we swapped to Sapphire Steel at that point. There's always a deck I've had sleeved up, always the deck I pick up. Like I might do one or two store champs with it, just because of the love of the deck. We always play it here and there. It's always good for testing against opponents. Like if they've in testing groups, if they've got a new list, it's like, well, you can try it into Ruby Amethyst and see how it does because it's such a popular deck as well, especially in Europe. So yeah, just building it sort of like this strong control, lock the game out, questing, like kind of getting the bounce package going on early on. You got some one drops in there as cantrips. Draw some cards, lock them out of the game later on with Sisu B prep, and then get them into like Tremaine locks. And with Sisu and Tremaine being higher questers than like a Medusa is, you can also close the game with that, and then like play some goats or whatever. So overall, yeah, really like kind of liking this. Like I think right now, if I was to do an event tomorrow, I mean, I'm going to do an event in Germany. It'll probably be between Ruby Amethyst or the Sapphire Steel deck, and it kind of just really depends on how I'm feeling at this point because the meta is so hard to predict. In my opinion, there's no reason for me to not bring either of those two decks. It still feels so wide. But like if I kind of go back to this, yeah, it still feels like I could bring either of those two decks. And as I say, this isn't very much set in stone meta. These can all shift. They're all good. They're all kind of on the same line of being A tier. Rather than like the placement I've kind of done is just like where it's at right now, which is really good for the game. It's been sad for Sapphire Steel players because the deck's kind of fallen out of favor. But yeah, these sort of have been trying where my like opinions have landed on the meta. Like again, all the research is good for me to improve the Kiwi decks to see what everyone's playing, to see how everyone's developing in this different time without Hiram. I think it's kind of mad that we thought if we could hire him out, the discard would just be so much stronger. But no, there was actually quite a lot of heavy answers for discard, whereas for Hiram there wasn't really much answers for it, and it would just sit there on the board getting value. Whereas now with Emerald, it's like if Emerald's going to be popular, we can just put a lot of stuff in our decks to beat Emerald. So yeah, very interesting matter, very cool, and lots going on.